So the original problem in today's lesson 5.8, we are going to still be factoring trinomials, but what's going to be different today is this last term, or the C, is going to be a negative number. Now, in order to factor these, in order to get a negative C, this is going to tell me that in my binomials, I am going to have different signs. So we're still going to be looking for the factors of the last number that will add to give us the middle. But know that the signs on the numbers will be different. So essentially what we're doing here is subtracting to get that middle term. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first example. We have x squared minus x minus 20. Remember that you can assume that there is a 1 here in front of the x. So I'm still doing the same thing as yesterday. I'm looking for the factors, or two numbers, that will multiply to give me negative 20, but the same two numbers that when I add them give me negative 1, which is the middle number. So let's go ahead and start listing the factors of negative 20. So again, remember, to get a negative number here, my signs need to be different. So I could multiply negative 1 times positive 20, or I could also do it as positive 1 times negative 20. And again, remember, we're looking for which one of the factors, when I add them, are going to give me negative 1. Notice when I add these two, I get 19. When I add these, I get negative 19. Then I'm going to keep going. Negative 2 times positive 10. Positive 2 times negative 10. When I add this one, I get 8. When I add this one, I get negative 8. None of these have yet to give me negative 1 when I add them. Then I'm going to do negative 3 doesn't work. So I could do negative 3. No, that doesn't work. I have to do negative 4 times positive 5, or positive 4 times negative 5. So here, when I add these two, I get a positive 1. And when I add these two, I get a negative 1. Notice I just found the factors that will multiply to give me the negative 20, but who will also add to give me negative 1. So now when I go to set up my binomials, again, a factored trinomial is going to give us two binomials. I'm going to take the x squared, and it goes, I split it apart, x there in the first one and an x in the second one. I'm going to write the two factors I just found, 4 and 5. And notice the 4 was positive and the 5 was negative. At this point, you should FOIL this to make sure that it's going back to your original problem. If it does not, then you need to go back and look for other factors, or maybe even just switch your signs. So when I FOIL it, I do get negative 1x in the center, or in the middle, and I do get negative 20 on the end. So the two factors of positive 4 and negative 5 are my correct factors. Now, a little clue. When you see that this last term is a negative number, this should be a clue that tells you your signs are going to be different. And a little trick here, the sign of the middle number will always be the sign of the larger factor. So notice all of this on my bigger factor was 5, and it got the negative sign, the sign of the middle. Okay, if that confuses you again, just list them all out, add them, and see which one works. Let's try another example. This time I'm looking for the factors of negative 30 that will add to give me 29. So again, we can list our factors. Now, if we do the trick, see how this is positive in the middle? So when I list my opposite signs, my bigger factor I'm going to make positive. So then I can also do -2 times +15, -3 times +10, -5 times +6. I'm going to go ahead and add these now to see which one gives me 29. This gives me 29, and I found it right at the beginning. This one would only give me 13, this would give me 7, and this would give me 1. So you're going to list them out. You're going to end up doing so much of this that you're going to automatically see it. Now, believe it or not, this very first one, the factor of 1 times the number, people tend to forget that one, and that's usually the most obvious. So for this one, when I write it in my binomials, I'm going to put an A at the beginning of both, and then I'm going to put the two numbers I just found, the 1 and the 30. Notice the 1 was negative, so it gets the subtraction sign, and the 30 was the positive. Again, you should FOIL this because you should become very quick at factoring or FOILing to make sure that it is going back. So first is A squared, 30A, -1A, and then -30. Again, when you group the middles, you do get the positive 29. So the correct answer is A -1 and A plus 30. Let's try example 3. Again, this time, notice there's a K squared here at the end. We're still only worried about the factors of -12. That will add to give me -4. Just remember, when you put them in your binomials, it's going to have a K at the end of the number. You don't have to find the domain, just the composite function. Okay, so here, the signs will be different. So now I need to start listing my factors of -12. So my factors of -12, again, I'm going to look at the sign in the middle. See how it's a negative? So when I'm listing my factors, the bigger number is going to get the negative sign because that's the sign in the middle. Always put the sign of the middle on your larger factor. It's a little trick to help you. So then here it's 1 times -12, 2 times -6, 3 times -4. Again, I'm looking for the pair that when I add them, I get -4. This gives me -11, this gives me -4, and this gives me -1. So the factors I'm looking for are +2 and -6. So I'll come back over here to my binomial. The -6 will go here, and the +2 goes here. Again, you should FOIL this to make sure it is going back to the original. So again, first is x squared, outside -6kx. Again, I write them alphabetically, so it's easier for me to find my like terms. Here, +2kx. And then finally, last, -12k squared. Notice again, when you group the outer and the inner, you'll always be able to group them because they are like terms. Sometimes they go away in the difference of two squares, but in this case, we're always going to be able to add or subtract them. So it did go back to my original problem. So my correct answer again is x -2k and x -6k. Let's look at another example here. Notice this time the variable is at the end, but we're still doing the same thing. We're still looking for factors of -24 that are going to add to give me -10. So notice this 1 here. So when I start my binomials, I'm going to put a 1 and a 1 first because 1 times 1 is 1. So now I need to list the factors of -24. So again, my middle sign is negative. So my larger factor gets the negative. So when I add this one, I get negative 23. Then if I do 2 times negative 12, I just found the correct answer. Now, you don't need to list all of them if as you're listing them, you're checking them. So I already found my answer. Now, keep in mind that 24 has a lot of factors. You can also do 3 times negative 8, 4 times negative 6. So there's 2 more factors that we, may need to also consider. Now, notice on this one, the 4 times negative 6, at first glance, you might think, oh, 4 plus 6 is 10. But remember, the sign needed to be negative. So in order to make that, they both would have had to be negative, but it wouldn't have given me a negative 24. So sometimes it's looking like there might be another pair, but there's always only one that works. So this is why I recommend foiling your answer, because if you would have chosen this one thinking this was the correct answer, foiling would have caught the mistake. So I'm going to put the 2x here and the negative 12x here. Because remember, we were trying to make negative 24x squared. So when I foil that and do the last, I do get the negative 24x squared. Okay, so your homework then is going to be 1 through 34 all. Again, the best way to get a good handle on this factoring is to do a lot of practice. That's it. This is 5-8. Tomorrow we will cover 5-9.